Hi friends, this is Miss Sadie from the Frederick County Boys and Girls Club. Today we're going to do a little follow-up lesson about habitats and how to protect habitats. So just as a refresher, I did a video a few weeks ago about the different kinds of habitats, where we talked about what the different kinds of habitats are, and you made a poster picking your favorite one and describing things about that habitat that you chose. So just to continue to reflect back, a habitat is where animals, or really any living thing, plants and us are all included in that, live, eat, like create families, whatever, wherever these animals or us or plants exist is a habitat. So there's a lot of different kinds of habitats. There is grassland habitat, polar habitat, desert, mountain, temperate forest, freshwater, ocean, and rainforest. So those are all different kinds of really different habitats. So in each habitat, different animals live and different plants live. And not all animals can live in all habitats, and that's why it's important that we protect all of our different kinds of habitats. So, how can we protect our habitats? Well, that is a wonderful question, and that is what we're going to talk about today. Before we start talking about that, I would invite you to think about times that you've seen like a really beautiful view, and think about what made it so beautiful. And then I would also invite you to think about times that you saw something that you thought like was an ugly view in nature, or not in nature, and why was it ugly, or why did your brain perceive it as ugly? So I would pause me for a second and think about that, kind of bounce that idea around, and also if you need a little more reflection about habitats, I would encourage you to rewatch the video that I've posted before about habitats. So we are going to talk about, first, we're going to talk about ways that we can protect habitats and that we can protect our planet. You might be wondering what we're protecting the planet and our habitats from. Climate change is one of those things. Climate change is a change in the weather of a place over time. So a lot of people think climate change is just like global warming is a term that was used, and that means that climate change only means that our planet is getting warmer. And if not all places on our planet are getting warmer, then climate change isn't real, which is incorrect. Climate change is like all-encompassing. It accounts for all weather changes. So it could be hotter in a place, it could be colder, it could rain more, or it could rain less. So when we think about the consequences of our climate changing, of our weather changing, we think about in a polar habitat, we think about warming, and what happens when you warm ice, it melts. And so that's going to mean that our sea levels are going to rise, and certain places that are really close to the ocean and really low elevation could be flooded. And we already see that happening. And then when we think about maybe less rain, that means that our crops are not going to grow as well. We're going to have to use more water and energy to bring that water to crops if it's not raining as much. We think about plants that need a lot of rain and water in nature dying. So those are all things that come with climate change. And it's really good. It can feel kind of overwhelming, but it's good to know these things and to think about them. And the great news is that later we're going to talk about ways that we can do our part to kind of help combat that and to protect our planet. So another thing we're protecting our habitats from is deforestation. That is a big word, but if you really think about it for a second, it's D and there's forest in that word. So basically that means cutting down a lot of trees. So trees actually really do a great job of regulating our climate, and they also do a great job of cleaning our air and making sure that the air is breathable for us humans and animals. So trees are really important, but the products that we get from using trees are also really important. That's paper, toilet paper, paper towels, all kinds of things that we do need them. We just have to be mindful about how much of them we're using and how we're using them. So deforestation happens for that reason. So you can use the trees to create new things, or use the wood from the trees to build houses or furniture. But deforestation also happens when there's a lot of trees in an area that you want to build buildings on. So in that process, harmful chemicals can also be released. Machines that cut down trees often they emit gases that aren't so good for the environment of that area. And we can also really be mindful about using harmful chemicals on the land that we farm as well. So those are just a couple of challenges that we're facing, but don't worry, because now we're going to talk about what we can do to help. And there's so much hope in that, I think. So I'm going to begin sharing my screen, and we are going to use the whiteboard setting. So I'm going to do that. So all right, we're gonna make a list, 2 lists actually. One list of things that we know are not so good for the environment, and one list of things that we know are really good for the environment and that we know we can do to help and to protect habitats. So I'm going to make the little thing thicker. So on this side, we're gonna do sad face. Ooh, that's a little rough. Try again. Sad face. And then on the other side, we're gonna do happy face. Yay! Okay. So we're gonna start with the things that we know are not so good for the environment and are not so good for our habitats. So what I would invite y'all, before I start listing things, I would love it if you guys could think of some, and you can even send them to me. I would love to hear them. So the first thing that comes to my mind that's not so good for the habitats is littering. That means throwing your trash on the ground instead of in the trash can, which is something I know y'all don't do, but it's important for others not to do it as well. Another thing is using a lot of single-use plastic bags. So single-use plastic. And it doesn't have to be plastic bags, it could be any kind of single-use plastic. So with me, when I get plastic bags, I like from the store, if I like forget my reusable one, I like to use those bags for, like, it's kind of gross, but cleaning my cat litter, or whatever I can. I try to reuse them as many times as I can, because it's not always avoidable. Sometimes you'll forget if you have a reusable bag, and that's okay. Another one is wasting electricity. So we also did a lesson, Miss Laura, Miss Amira, and I did a fun quiz show about ways that you can conserve energy, and I would really strongly recommend that y'all go and watch that. It was so fun to make, and we all learned so much. So I'm gonna write wasting electricity. Some examples of that are leaving things plugged in, things that don't need to be plugged in. So things like the fridge should always be plugged in, but things like your computer charger don't have to always be plugged in. Leaving lights on, etc. All right, and another thing that is unfortunately not so good for the environment is driving a lot. So that's especially relevant for like if you're driving somewhere that you could walk. But I mean, you can't always, sometimes you have to drive, of course. You can't always walk somewhere, and maybe you need to drive because you hurt your foot or something like that. That is also totally okay. But just, well, that's how we can start our smiley face. The things that we can do is just trying to walk or ride your bike or carpool with each other whenever you can. Whoops. Perfect. Okay, another thing that we can do is to recycle, and I would add recycle properly. So it's important to learn what recycling looks like where you live and how to do it, because there's kind of a lot of misconceptions about it, unfortunately. Okay. And we already talked about using reusable grocery bags. So those are really important. That means non-plastic grocery bags. What else? Definitely, we also talked about unplugging appliances. And turning off the lights is a really easy way. So like say I was in the living room, but now I'm in the kitchen, I turned off my lights in the living room. Also, something that I love is composting. It's not possible for everyone, and that's okay, but it is a cool thing to learn about. So composting is when instead of throwing your food waste in the trash can, you put it in a big pile and you can turn it, and it basically turns into fertilizer after you leave all of that food waste. And then you can reuse it on plants and in gardens. So that's a fun thing to learn about. And taking shorter showers is a big one. That is a good way to conserve water. Oops. I can be bad about that sometimes. And finally, what I would say is kind of standing up for our planet. So that means having really friendly conversations with your peers and your family about ways that you can help out and ways that you can reduce your use of plastic and reduce your use of water and all of that. So those are all really good conversations to be having and things to be thinking about. So talk about it. All right. So I'm sure that you guys have come up with so many other awesome ways to protect habitats and also things that are not so good for them. Again, I would love to hear them. But for right now, we're going to move on to the next part of our lesson. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. There we go. So now I challenge you to pick one way that you can kind of protect our planet and protect habitats. So one way that we talked about, or one thing that you thought of all by yourself, and make a poster about that way. So the poster can look however you want. You can have words, it can have words and pictures, it can have only pictures. You can use paper and a pencil, or you can use paper and markers, whatever you want. I do have an example. I made one. So this is, I reused the paper that I have something else in the back. But this is a clock taking a shower. And so that is my way of representing taking shorter showers or paying attention to how much time you spend in the shower. So that was my poster, and I cannot wait to see yours. I know they're going to be so beautiful. Yes, and as always, if you have questions, please reach out to my email. It's in the other videos, and it's also online. Or you can do that on Facebook or Instagram or however you want. when you're done with that activity, so you can go ahead and pause me, make your poster. I would encourage you to make a rough draft and then a final draft. I know that I did that, and I'm glad I did because I kind of messed up on the first one. But again, it doesn't have to be perfect. You're just doing your best. So I'd invite you to pause me, do that, and then come back, and we will talk a little bit about reflecting on this activity. So in reflection, I would love for you to think about what happens if a habitat gets destroyed. So one example would be what happens if there's no more bees because their habitat got destroyed. That would mean that there's no more vegetables or fruits, because the reason we have vegetables and fruits is because bees pollinate our plants, yada yada. It's very important. So that would be one example. I encourage you to think more about what happens if other kinds of habitats are destroyed. We talked a little bit earlier about sea level rise. So that's what would happen if we destroyed our polar ice caps. There's all kinds of things. So think about that, and then kind of flip that around and think about what you've learned today, and think about what new things you're going to try in the future. So I know for me, like I said, it is taking shorter showers to conserve water. But yeah, so I would love to hear your answers to this reflection, or you can talk about them with the people who you are with right now. You can do it however you want. But thank you so much for listening, and I can't wait to see you soon.